I want to tell you something today that changed my entire life. When I was young, I used to sit under the same tree every single day, watching the sunrise. Some mornings, I felt inspired, alive, ready to meditate for hours. Other mornings, I felt nothing. Empty. Restless. My mind would wander to 1,000 places, and I would think to myself, what is wrong with me? Why can I not feel that same fire every day? And I think you know this feeling too. You wake up one morning, and you are ready to change your life. You are going to exercise, you are going to meditate, you are going to read that book, finish that work, be better. And you do it. For one day, maybe two, maybe even a week. But then something happens. You lose that feeling. The inspiration fades, and slowly, quietly, you go back to how things were before. I see this everywhere. In every person I meet. And I want you to know something very important right now, right at the beginning of our conversation. This is not your fault. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are simply human. But I also want to tell you something else. There is a secret, a very simple, very powerful secret that I discovered, not in books, not from teachers, but from life itself. And this secret made me who I am today. It is the reason I could wake up at 4 in the morning every single day for years. It is the reason I could meditate when my body screamed in pain. It is the reason I could speak to thousands when my heart trembled with fear. And today, I am going to share this secret with you. Not because I want to impress you. Not because I want you to think I am special. But because I know, deep in my soul, that you have something important to do in this world. And the only thing standing between you and that greatness is one simple thing. Consistency. The ability to show up every single day, no matter what you feel. So sit with me now. Give me 30 minutes of your life. And I promise you, by the end of our time, together, you will understand something that most people never learn in their entire lifetime. You will learn how to stay consistent every single day. Not through willpower. Not through suffering. But through understanding. Through a shift so simple, so profound, that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And your life will never be the same again. Let me tell you something that perhaps will shake you awake. You think you are seeking happiness, but you are not. What you are really seeking is a permanent state where nothing can disturb you, where nothing can take away your peace. And you believe that certain conditions, a perfect relationship, financial security, recognition, health, will give you that state. This is the grand illusion. You have made happiness conditional. You have told yourself a story that goes like this. When I achieve this, when I acquire that, when this person behaves the way I want, when this situation changes, then I will be at peace. Then I will be happy. And so you live in a perpetual state of waiting. Postponing your joy, delaying your peace. Always one step away from the life you dream of living. But let me ask you directly, has this strategy ever worked? Not temporarily. I mean permanently. Has any achievement, any possession, any person ever given you lasting peace? You got that job you desperately wanted. For a few weeks, perhaps a few months, you felt satisfied. Then what happened? The joy faded. New anxieties appeared. New goals emerged. The goalpost moved, didn't it? You fell in love. In those early days, you felt complete. You thought, this is it. This person completes me. But gradually, the intensity dimmed. Expectations crept in. Disappointments accumulated. And the very person who once gave you joy became a source of frustration. This is not pessimism. This is not cynicism. This is simply observation. The courageous observation that reveals something profound about the nature of conditioned happiness. External things are inherently unstable. They come and go, they change form, they decay. Your body ages, relationships transform. Wealth fluctuates, circumstances shift. To base your peace on something that is constantly changing is to build your house on sand. And yet there is something within you that never changes. Something that was there when you were a child, that is here now, and that will be there in your final breath. A witnessing presence, a silent awareness. Your true self. This is not something you must acquire through arduous practices or distant pilgrimages. You already possess it. You have always possessed it. The problem is simply that you have forgotten. You have become so identified with the costume that you have forgotten the actor beneath. I remember once sitting by the Ganges at dawn, watching a young boy crying because his clay toy had broken. His tears were real. His grief was genuine. But I knew, and soon he would know that by afternoon he would have forgotten that toy entirely. Absorbed in some new game, some new joy. Was his morning grief false? No. But neither was it the totality of his being. He was the witness to his own grief, even as he experienced it. You are like that boy. You cry over broken toys, lost jobs, failed relationships, aging bodies, disappointed dreams. The tears are real. I do not diminish your pain. But you are not the pain. You are the awareness within which pain arises and passes. This distinction, my friend, is not philosophical abstraction. It is intensely practical. When you know yourself as the witness, something miraculous happens. The grip of suffering loosens. Not because the circumstances change, but because your relationship to them transforms entirely. The thoughts still come, of course they do. The body still feels it must. The emotions still arise, they are part of human experience. But you are no longer drowning in them. You are the sky through which clouds pass. You are the screen upon which the movie plays. You are the ocean, not merely the waves. And here is what the materialist cannot grasp. This witnessing awareness is not cold or distant. It is not detachment in the sense of not caring. Quite the opposite. When you are no longer enslaved by your reactions, you can respond to life with true compassion, true wisdom, true love. The mother who is not panicked herself can better comfort her frightened child. The physician who remains calm can better heal his patient. This detachment is not indifference, it is freedom. It is not coldness, it is the warmest thing in the world. For when you are no longer caught in the whirlpool of your own pain, you have space to truly see the pain of others. When you are no longer drowning in your own suffering, you can extend your hand to those who are drowning. The worldly person thinks, if I become detached, I will lose my passion, my drive, my humanity. But I tell you, it is the opposite. The attached person is like a man standing in front of a mirror, so absorbed in his own reflection that he cannot see the living beings around him. He weeps for his sorrows, celebrates his victories, defends his opinions, and the whole world becomes nothing but a stage for his personal drama. But the detached soul? He steps away from the mirror. Suddenly, he sees not just himself, but the entire room. He sees the child crying in the corner. He sees the old woman struggling with her burden. He sees the man hiding his pain behind false laughter. Now he can act not from his ego, but from his essence. Not from his wounds, but from his wholeness. I have watched men achieve great worldly success, money, power, reputation, and remain utterly miserable. Why? Because they are attached to these things. Every gain brings fear of loss. Every achievement brings anxiety about the next. They climb mountains of gold only to discover they have built a prison with walls of worry. And I have seen poor monks, owning nothing but the cloth on their backs, radiating such joy that people are drawn to them like moths to a flame. What is their secret? They have touched the pearl. They have tasted freedom. They have discovered that happiness is not found in getting what you want, but in transcending the tyranny of want itself. This is the teaching of the Gita: do your duty. Perform your work, give your best, but remain unattached to the fruits. The farmer plants the seed, waters the soil, removes the weeds, this is his duty. But whether the harvest is abundant or meager, whether rain comes or drought arrives, this is not in his hands. If he does his work with attachment, the drought will destroy not just his crops but his peace. If he works with detachment, he remains whole regardless of the outcome. This is the difference between slavery and freedom. The attached man is a slave to results. The detached man is free in action itself. And here, many people ask me, Swamiji, does this not lead to indifference? If I am detached from results, will I not become lazy? Will I not stop caring? My answer is always the same. You have confused detachment with indifference. They are not the same. They are opposites. The indifferent man does not act. He sits idle. He says, "Why should I try? Nothing matters." His heart has become cold. His spirit has died. But the detached man acts with full vigor. He gives his complete energy, his total focus, his deepest intelligence to his work. The difference is that he does not tie his inner peace to the outcome. He is fully engaged in the process, but liberated from anxiety about results. Think of a surgeon performing a critical operation. If he is attached, his hands will tremble with fear of failure. He will be thinking, "What if the patient dies? What will people say? How will this affect my reputation?" These thoughts will destroy his precision. His attachment will kill his skill. But if he is detached, he remains calm. His hands are steady. His mind is clear. He does everything that can be done, with complete dedication, with absolute focus. And yet, he knows that some factors are beyond his control. The patient's own body, destiny, 1,000 invisible forces these he cannot command. The detached surgeon is the better surgeon. His detachment does not make him careless, it makes him capable. I have seen this in every field. The detached student learns better than the anxious one. The detached businessman makes wiser decisions than the desperate one. The detached artist creates more beautiful work than the one obsessed with fame. Why? Because anxiety clouds the mind. Attachment creates agitation. And in agitation, intelligence cannot flower. In anxiety, creativity cannot bloom. When you are free from the fever of results, your natural intelligence awakens. Your innate abilities express themselves fully. You become like a mirror, clear, reflecting reality as it is, not distorted by desire and fear. This is what I want you to understand deeply. Karma Yoga is not about doing less. It is about being free while doing more. It is not withdrawal from action. It is mastery in action. And this mastery, my friend, begins with understanding the true nature of attachment. When you cling to outcomes, you become their prisoner. You work not from love, but from fear. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of loss. Every action becomes a transaction. If I do this, I must get that. And when the result does not match your expectation, you collapse. Your peace depends on circumstances you cannot control. This is the tragedy I see everywhere. Brilliant minds paralyzed by anxiety. Generous hearts closed by disappointment. Powerful souls diminished by the need for approval. But when you act without attachment to results, you reclaim your power. You give your absolute best, because excellence is its own reward. You work with focus, with intensity, with love, not because you will gain something, but because the action itself is sacred. I have seen this in artists who create not for applause, but because creation is their breath. I have seen this in mothers who love not for gratitude, but because love flows naturally from their being. I have seen this in teachers who teach not for recognition, but because sharing knowledge is their joy. These people are free. They work harder than anyone else, yet they carry no burden. They face setbacks with calm. They receive success with humility. Why? Because their sense of self is not dependent on external validation. This is what Krishna meant when he said, "You have a right to action alone, never to its fruits." You think this makes you passive? No. It makes you unstoppable. When you are attached to results, you hesitate. What if I fail? What will they think? Every risk becomes terrifying. But when you release attachment, you become fearless. You try. You experiment. You take bold action. Because you are not protecting an image. You are simply expressing your truth. And here is the beautiful paradox. When you stop grasping for results, better results come. Why? Because you are no longer working from tension and desperation. You are working from clarity and power. Your energy is not scattered in anxiety. It is concentrated in the present moment. This is not philosophy. This is physics. This is psychology. This is the secret every peak performer has discovered. Whether they call it flow state, or being in the zone, or simply doing what I love. The surgeon who saves lives is not thinking about his reputation during surgery. The athlete who breaks records is not calculating her endorsement deals during the race. They are completely present, completely absorbed, completely free. This state is available to you right now. in whatever you are doing. You ask me, how? How do I enter this state, while washing dishes, while walking to work, while sitting in traffic? The answer is simpler than your mind wants it to be. Your mind wants a 10-step system. A course. A certification. Something to achieve, something to complete, so it can say, there, I have done it, I am now spiritual. But consciousness doesn't work that way. Let me give you the most practical instruction I can. Whatever you are doing in this moment, do only that. Not that plus thinking about what happened yesterday. Not that plus worrying about tomorrow's meeting. Not that plus scrolling through a second screen in your mind. Just that. When you eat, eat. When you walk, walk. When you listen to another person, listen, not plan your response, not judge their words, not wait for your turn to speak. This sounds almost insultingly simple, doesn't it? And yet I challenge you, try it for 60 seconds. Just 60 seconds of doing one thing with your complete attention. You will discover how violent your mind has become, how it jumps, thrashes, runs in 7 directions simultaneously like a terrified animal. This is what your culture has done to you. It has trained you to fragment your attention into smaller and smaller pieces until you are everywhere except where you actually are. You call this efficiency, productivity, maximizing your time. I call it a slow form of dying. Because life only happens in presence. Everything else is a memory or a fantasy. The divine doesn't live in your yesterday or your tomorrow. The divine lives in your now. And when you bring your full attention to this moment, not forced concentration, not grim determination, just gentle, complete presence, something extraordinary happens. The separation between you and the action dissolves. You are not someone washing dishes. You are the washing. You are not someone walking. You are the walking itself. This is what the ancients meant by meditation in action. Not sitting on a mountaintop in a cave, not escaping life. But bringing such quality of presence to ordinary action that it becomes sacred. Your kitchen becomes a temple. Your workplace becomes an altar. Every conversation becomes communion. This is the spirituality the world needs now. Not more rituals, not more beliefs, not more division between the holy and the mundane, but the recognition that everything is already holy when met with full presence. And here is where the transformation begins, not in some distant future, but in the very next breath you take. Because what I am describing is not a philosophical position to adopt. It is not something you argue for at dinner parties or write about in journals. It is a lived reality that demands your entire being. When you cook your next meal, are you there, truly there? Or is your mind wandering through tomorrow's worries while your hands move mechanically through the motions? When you speak with another human being, are you present with them, or are you already formulating your response, defending your position, waiting for your turn to speak? This simple, profound presence is the beginning of everything. I watch you chase after spiritual experiences. You attend retreats, you learn meditation techniques, you accumulate practices like a merchant accumulates goods. And there is nothing wrong with these things in themselves. But if they become another form of avoidance, another way to postpone the real work, then they are worse than useless. The real work is here, now, in this body you inhabit. In this moment you are living. In this breath you are breathing. You say you want enlightenment. Then enlighten the space around you. Bring consciousness to the way you wash a dish. Bring awareness to the way you walk across a room. Bring presence to the way you listen when someone speaks. This is not small work. This is not preliminary work before the real spirituality begins. This is the work. This is the entire path. And it is revolutionary, truly revolutionary, because it requires you to give up the one thing you've been protecting most carefully, your idea of who you should be. Not who you are. Who you should be. That idealized version of yourself that meditates perfectly, speaks wisely, radiates compassion effortlessly, has transcended all petty concerns. That fantasy self that justifies all your spiritual striving. What if you let that go? What if you met yourself right now, exactly as you are, with complete acceptance, not resignation? Not giving up on growth, but acceptance as the very ground from which real transformation becomes possible. Because here's what I discovered in my years of spiritual struggle and teaching. Transformation without acceptance is merely rearrangement. You move the furniture around in the same room and call it a new house. You change your circumstances but carry the same inner resistance into every new situation. Real transformation, the kind that touches your very essence, begins when you stop fighting what is and start working with it. Let me give you an example from nature. A seed doesn't resist being buried in darkness. It doesn't spend its energy protesting the weight of the soil above it. It accepts its present condition completely, and from that acceptance, it begins to transform. The darkness becomes the womb of its becoming. The pressure becomes the catalyst for breaking open. But we humans, we fight our darkness, we resent our burial. We exhaust ourselves pushing against the very conditions that could transform us. I remember a young student who came to me in Calcutta, devastated by failure. He had prepared for years to become a barrister, only to fail his examinations spectacularly. "My life is over," he told me. "All those years wasted." I asked him, "Can you accept this failure completely? Not justify it, not romanticize it. Simply accept it as your present reality." He looked at me with confusion. "But if I accept it, won't I stop trying to succeed?" "Try this," I said. "Spend 1 month in complete acceptance. Don't fight what has happened. Don't replay your mistakes obsessively. Simply acknowledge, this is where I am. Then observe what arises naturally from that acceptance." 3 months later, he returned. Not as a defeated man, but as someone who had discovered his true calling. The acceptance of his failure had freed energy he'd been spending on resistance. In that freedom, he'd recognized something. His heart had never truly been in law. He'd been chasing his father's dream, not his own. The failure he'd resisted so fiercely had been trying to redirect him all along. This is what acceptance does. It doesn't make you passive, it makes you perceptive. When you stop wrestling with reality, you can finally see it clearly. And in that clarity, the path forward often reveals itself. You see, acceptance is not the end of action, it is the beginning of right action. When a man accepts that he has lost his way in the forest, only then does he stop walking in circles and begin to look for the stars. When a physician accepts the true nature of a disease, only then can he prescribe the proper treatment. The surgeon does not argue with the wound, he accepts it and operates. I once met a merchant in Calcutta who had lost everything in a single day. His ships had sunk, his warehouses had burned, his partners had betrayed him. He came to me in desperation, asking, "Swamiji, how do I fight this? How do I undo what has happened?" And I told him what I tell you now. You cannot fight yesterday. Yesterday is not your enemy, it is your teacher. Accept what has happened, not as a defeat, but as a fact. Then ask yourself, what does today require of me? Within 6 months, that man had rebuilt his fortune. Not by denying his losses, but by accepting them so completely that they no longer drained his energy. He stopped pouring his life force into the past, and redirected it entirely into the present. This is the secret the wise ones have always known. The Bhagavad Gita does not teach Krishna, telling Arjuna to pretend the war isn't happening. It teaches acceptance of what is, followed by decisive action. Do your duty, Krishna says. Not wish your duty were different, or imagine you have no duty, but accept the reality of your position and act from there. You are standing at a crossroads right now. In one direction lies the exhausting path of resistance, fighting what is, arguing with reality, spending your precious days wishing things were otherwise. In the other direction lies the liberating path of acceptance, seeing clearly, acting wisely, and moving forward with your full power intact. The question is not whether you have the strength to walk this path. You do. The question is whether you will choose it. Will you continue to carry the weight of what cannot be changed? Or will you set it down and discover how light, how free, how powerful you truly are? Because here is what I learned in the mountains, in the silence of meditation. That freedom is not something distant. It is not reserved for saints or sages. It is your birthright. It has always been yours. You simply forgot. You forgot because the world taught you to remember everything else. It taught you to remember every slight, every failure, every moment of shame. It built monuments to your pain and called them lessons. It convinced you that to let go was to lose, to forget was to betray, to forgive was to condone. But I tell you now, none of this is true. When I walked through the villages of India, I met a woman who had lost her only son. For years, she wore black. She spoke to no one, she lived as though she too had died. One day, I asked her, "What would your son wish for you?" She looked at me with hollow eyes and said, "He would want me to be happy." Then, I said, "Why do you dishonor his wish every single day?" She wept. And in that weeping, something broke open. Not immediately. Not perfectly. But slowly, she began to understand that her grief had become an identity. That she was clinging to pain because releasing it felt like releasing him. This is the trap. We make altars of our wounds. We think that by preserving the pain, we preserve the connection to what we lost. But the opposite is true. The pain obscures the love. The bitterness drowns out the lesson. The resentment blocks the blessing that was always trying to reach you through the experience. To let go is not to forget, it is to remember correctly. To honor without being imprisoned. To acknowledge without being defined. I have seen people carry grudges for decades, only to discover at the end that the person they hated had forgotten the incident entirely. All that suffering, all that heaviness, for a battle that existed only in their own mind. What a tragic waste of precious life force. You have been given this one wild, beautiful, fleeting existence. And every moment you spend replaying old hurts is a moment stolen from your present potential. Every ounce of energy you pour into resentment is energy you cannot use to create, to love, to become. The question is not whether you have been hurt. The question is, will you allow that hurt to define the rest of your life? I have seen men carry grudges for decades, nursing them like precious possessions, feeding them daily with bitter thoughts. And what did they gain? Nothing but twisted hearts and wasted years. Meanwhile, those they resented moved on, forgot, or perhaps never even knew the depth of anger directed toward them. This is the terrible irony of unforgiveness. It chains you to the very person or event you wish to escape. You think by holding on to anger, you maintain some power, some control. But the opposite is true. Every time you revisit that old wound, you give it fresh power over you. Every time you rehearse that conversation, replay that betrayal, you breathe new life into what should have died long ago. Let me be direct. Your resentment does not hurt them. It destroys you. It destroys your peace. It destroys your capacity for joy. It destroys your ability to trust, to open, to receive the good that life still wants to give you. You become a fortress, yes, but a fortress is also a prison. You lock them out, but you lock yourself in. And here is what breaks my heart most: you were not born for this. You were not created to be a monument to past pain. You were made for expansion, for growth, for love that flows freely like a mountain stream. Every moment you spend as a curator of old grievances is a betrayal of your own magnificent potential. So what is the alternative? Must you simply pretend nothing happened? Must you become naive and vulnerable again? No. 1,000 times no. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is not about excusing. It is not about reconciliation with those who harmed you. You need never speak to them again if wisdom dictates distance. Forgiveness is about liberation, your liberation. It is the conscious decision to stop drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. It is reclaiming the energy you have invested in the past and redirecting it toward your future. It is severing the invisible cord that keeps you tethered to old pain. My friend, when you hold on to resentment, you become a prisoner of someone else's actions. You allow another person's behavior, perhaps from years ago, to dictate your present emotional state. Think about the absurdity of this arrangement. Someone who may have forgotten you entirely, someone who may not even be alive anymore, continues to control your inner world. You wake up carrying their burden, you go to sleep rehearsing their transgressions. You have given them permanent residence in your mind, rent-free, and they don't even know it. This is not strength. This is voluntary imprisonment. Forgiveness is the key you've been holding all along. But so many refuse to use it because they believe forgiveness means condoning the wrong, excusing the harm, or pretending it didn't hurt. This is a fundamental misunderstanding. Forgiveness does not require you to say, what you did was acceptable. It requires you to say, what you did will no longer define me. There is tremendous power in this distinction. When you forgive, you are not declaring the other person innocent. You are declaring yourself free. You are choosing your peace over their punishment. You are recognizing that carrying hatred is like carrying a burning coal. You are the one getting burned while waiting for the chance to throw it. I have met people who have been deeply wounded, betrayed by partners, abandoned by parents, cheated by business associates, slandered by friends. The pain was real. The injustice was undeniable. But years later, when the original wound has healed, they continue to tear open the scar themselves, examining it daily, showing it to others, using it as proof of their victimhood. The perpetrator has moved on, perhaps changed, perhaps forgotten entirely. But the victim remains frozen in time, endlessly replaying the moment of injury. This is not remembrance. This is self-torture masquerading as loyalty to your pain. The Buddha spoke of this with profound clarity. Attachment to suffering is still attachment. You cling to your wounds as if they are precious jewels, polishing them daily with your attention, displaying them to yourself in the mirror of memory. See how I was wronged, you whisper to your own reflection. See how much I have endured. But I ask you, what garden grows in soil constantly turned over to expose old roots? What tree bears fruit when you water only the place where lightning once struck? There is a crucial distinction we must understand. Forgiveness does not require you to lie. You need not tell yourself that abuse was kindness, that betrayal was loyalty, that cruelty was love. The person who harmed you may indeed have been wrong. Completely, devastatingly wrong. Forgiveness asks only that you stop waiting for them to make it right. Because here is the truth that will set you free. They cannot undo what was done. Even if they fell to their knees tomorrow in perfect repentance, even if they spent their remaining days attempting to atone, the past would remain unchanged. You would still have lived those moments. The scars would still exist. So what, then, are you truly waiting for? For time to reverse? For history to rewrite itself? You are waiting for an impossibility. And meanwhile, the present moment, this moment, the only moment you actually possess, slips through your fingers like sand. I have watched people waste decades in this waiting room of wounded pride. They build elaborate cases in the courtroom of their minds, prosecuting the same defendant again and again, delivering guilty verdicts that no one hears except themselves. They believe this endless trial is justice. It is not. It is simply the illusion of power over a situation where you have already lost. True power lies not in endlessly proving you were wronged, but in deciding that the wrong no longer defines you. This is not weakness. This is the ultimate assertion of your sovereignty over your own life. And this sovereignty begins when you stop treating your past as a continuous courtroom where you are both the prosecutor and the witness who never steps down. I have met souls who have spent decades perfecting their testimony. They know every date, every cruel word, every slight. They have catalogued their suffering with the precision of a scholar. And yet, they are imprisoned by the very evidence they've gathered. You ask me, is it wrong to remember? No. But there is a difference between remembering and reliving. Between acknowledging what happened and letting it happen again and again in the courtroom of your mind. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. But let me add this. Holding on to the need to be vindicated is like waiting at the station for a train that was never scheduled to arrive. You waste your life on a platform, watching others come and go, insisting that justice will pull in at any moment. It will not because the universe is unjust, but because your healing was never dependent on that train arriving. There is a story from the Mahabharata that haunts me. After the Great War, when everything was destroyed, when brothers had killed brothers, when the field was soaked with the blood of teachers and students alike, Yudhishthira, the righteous king, stood among the ashes and asked, "Was it worth it? We won. But what did we win?" He had justice. He had vindication. He had the throne, but he had lost everything that made the throne meaningful. This is the cruel irony. Sometimes we sacrifice our peace on the altar of being proven right. And when we finally get what we wanted, we realize we no longer recognize the person holding the victory. I see this in relationships destroyed by stubbornness. A husband and wife, married 20 years, stop speaking over a disagreement, neither can even remember clearly after months pass. Each waits for the other to apologize first. Each builds elaborate justifications for why they're right and the other is wrong. They construct entire narratives where they're the victim and their partner is the villain. Pride becomes the third person in the marriage. It sits between them, at the dinner table. It sleeps in the bed where intimacy once lived. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the relationship dies not from lack of love, but from excess of ego. When someone finally extends the olive branch, often too late, what remains? Two people who've become strangers. The victory of being right tastes like ash. This is why the wise cultivate what I call flexible strength, the ability to hold convictions while remaining open to transformation. You are not a stone statue that cracks when pressure is applied. You are water, which takes the shape of any vessel yet never loses its essential nature. When someone challenges you, pause. Take one breath before defending yourself. In that space, ask, am I protecting truth or protecting ego? Am I defending a principle or defending my image? Most arguments dissolve in this space. You'll discover that what felt like a matter of life and death is actually a matter of preference. What seemed like an attack on your identity is merely a different perspective. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you release the need to be right, you often discover a deeper truth than either position held. Thesis meets antithesis, and synthesis emerges richer and more complete than what either person originally claimed. This doesn't mean you become passive. This doesn't mean you abandon your values or let others walk over you. It means you fight for what truly matters while letting go of petty victories that cost you your peace. The Buddha said, holding onto anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I say, holding on to the need to be right is like building a palace from thorns and wondering why you bleed every time you come home.